pleasure to welcome our speaker today. Our speaker is Bill Davis. He is a Michigan-based artist and associate professor of photography and intermedia at Western Michigan University. He has worked on 6 continents, remember we only have 7, in a photography career spanning 35 years. He is here at the Institute to share his project, No Darkened Sight, Light and the Night It Transforms, which you may have seen as you came here into the auditorium, so it's already out. And it highlights how artificial light is used to manage society. Bill Davis photographs many sites classified as overly lit nighttime space according to the Bortle Dark Sky Scale Ratings, which is basically a 9-number scale rating from rural sites all the way to city sites. The night sky is getting brighter, and his solo exhibition shows us where, how, and why. His work can be seen online and is included in many private, public, and museum collections in the U.S. as well as Europe. And following the presentation, we're going to have lunch in the dining room for those who've purchased it. But then at 1 o'clock, we're going to have a free artist reception. He can tell you more about his exhibit. I think we have some food even, so stick around for that. That's from 1 to 3 this afternoon as well. So please help me in welcoming Bill Davis.
Thank you. Thanks. I want to thank Barb and Ellen and the Cedar Creek Institute for hosting this. It's nice to be back in a slightly different way. But I basically work the night shift. And you'll see in the images all around the Institute that there are a variety of different examples of that. So I was speaking at a conference in Hawaii, and like any photographer, I'm going to take my camera when I get a chance to go somewhere. It's normal that you would take a camera. It's a bit like traveling. And of course I wanted to photograph the natural wonders of the landscape. And I came across this beautiful, twisted array of roots. And I thought, well, I like anyone who's passionate about what they do. You see something, you immediately want to photograph it. And I had to. And it's kind of easy to fall in love with something like this. And I think it's easy for us to fall in love with nature. But how do we show it? And I'd like to suggest that we see an image like this through a different lens, just the way I did when I finally panned back. If you look closely, you'll see evidence of ourselves, humans, that decided that they needed to use this tree as a chalkboard or as a way to tell us a different story than our roots would have otherwise told. And I thought, oh yeah, right. I'm not the first one to see this. I'm not original like every artist wants to be. So I continued my track and came across another beautiful landscape. And it was cloudy. The light wasn't that perfect. But, you know, I hear this all the time when I speak. People love nature. They love being out in it. They love the night sky. They love the day sky. But the question we have to ask ourselves, that I ask myself, is how am I part of the problem? How can I be part of the solution? And how do we respect nature? So here's my big question. How do we save ourselves from ourselves? This isn't a stock image. There's no Photoshop here. I just happen to be ready and willing at the right time, and other people were too. Now this is long before the idea of a selfie and other things. But do we design well-being into our lives? That's a question that I think we need to be asking ourselves as a society. And where are the warning signs in the things that we're engaged with in consumables and our products and our experiences and the things that we do in our activity on a daily basis? And if we had warning signs, would we even follow the advice? That's why I present this image to you. So I do see this as a metaphor for humanity, and I think in many situations we're beyond the guardrail. I don't think any one of us can necessarily have a conversation throughout the day without an indication that somehow we have exceeded a boundary of some sort. Of course, I find this in other travels too. So we ignore instruction. We don't bother to deeply study the effects of our activity, and to me that's alarming. So I didn't necessarily come here to show you pictures of people breaking rules, okay? And ignoring the warning signs. Okay? But I did kind of come here to explain the project, okay? And what I've discovered. Switching gears a little bit, I do find this image to be alarming. Okay? It's related to the last images because it does have warning signs. They're not in text, and they don't tell you to not cross a guardrail or to not slide down a hill in a different language, even if that hill is made of rock. But this is a sign that's far less visible, but it's really, really important. So the light is the warning that I will further speak about in the context of our relationship to natural and unnatural phenomena. So, I mean, darkness, it can scare the daylights out of you, and it can ignite your imagination, it can invade safe space, and I also think it can prompt us to relax. Okay? So for me, right, darkness is a little bit scary. Right? It can psych us out. Right? You can't see what you can't see, and your imagination takes off. But are we more afraid of safe darkness or unsafe light? And my question, did the monster ever crawl out from under the bed? No. So our imagination gets the best of us, of course. But there comes a time when darkness can heal us and can propel our well-being. And I think we need to wholly embrace the night because in its natural form, it's a huge benefit. Now, many fear the dark, okay? And especially, I think, when it is something that our imagination takes over, or when our imagination gets a stronger grip than reality. But we may also be very well to be afraid of the light, okay? Especially when it transitions from a friend to a frenemy. So, as an artist, I was trained to see light as a guiding star, and then one day a friend challenged me. He said, why don't you take a look at where your discipline intersects with sustainability? Where does your discipline meet at a crossroads with that? And I said to him, I thought I was on the right side of things. I thought I was a good guy. You're telling me I'm unsustainable. He said, no, but you may find some things that are important lessons. So I did. And, like anyone who has this identity crisis in their career, they realize, I might be doing some things wrong. I may have misunderstood light. No light, no picture. As a photographer, that's a simple equation. We depend on natural light. We depend on artificial light to tell our stories. So I was looking out my window and I made this image just to start off the project a couple of years ago. And I actually called a friend at night and I said, okay, are you ready for this? Like everything I think that we've been doing, and he also photographs everything that I think we know may be wrong about light. It's not the benefit, it's not the ally, it's not what we were trained to appreciate. It has much greater impact, it has a much greater significance in our lives. And hello? He said, well, you either need to see a therapist or you need to just hang up because it's after midnight. Sorry, I didn't realize that, but I felt very passionate in that moment. So we are living in a world that we've changed. And quick question for you guys, what does this image mean to you? Anyone?
Starry Night.
Starry Night.
Starry Night.
I'm not putting the title, but yeah, it's a bit dated, right? For multiple reasons, okay? But it tells stories, right? And Starry Nights are important stories that we like to embrace. Now, does that meaning change anything in the comparison of this diptych? So, Starry Night, Van Gogh, and the other one is by Frederick Church, Polar Light. So there was this time when we had access to darker skies. Okay? And there's a subtle theme emerging here. And I want to share these quotes. Okay? By Van Gogh, it often seems to him that night is much more alive and richly colored. And then a Czech poet, darkness pulls in everything, shapes and fires, animals and myself, how easily it gathers them, powers of people, great energies moving near me. And I like the way he finishes, I have faith in the nights. So we all have a story about light. Okay? Maybe light has saved your life. Okay? Maybe it's to change the way you behave. You might have to dig deep to think about this. There are stories that every person seems to have when I present this work about an experience with darkness or with light. So clearly Van Gogh and Church and other painters, Church painted along the Hudson Valley, they, both of them, valued natural darkness because it was the way that they could tell their stories. So 10 years before Starry Night, Van Gogh had access to natural darkness in a very dim night that we no longer have. That's why I'm here to share this project, No Dark in Sight, because it's an exhibition to convey how light is used to manage culture. Now that's a very wide umbrella, and it leaves a lot of doors open, and you'll see that in the photographs. But if you like what's on the left, you have to question what's on the right. It's a bit of a seesaw. I'm not against light. I'm not opposed to artificial light. There are benefits to it, but it sometimes crosses its own guardrail into our lives. So let's fast forward to the 21st century. Things have changed. The world is vascularized with the new electric grid. Artificial light has changed our identity. We've made it normal. I can't imagine that we wouldn't think of turning the light on when we enter a room. The question is, do we think of not turning it on? And what does that room give to us? How is that place designed? So begin to think, if artificial light has changed our identity and our relationship to nature, inside or even outside, of course, I began to think, are there other places that tell the same story? So we have Van Gogh's painting of Starry Night. In 2016, we have a light pollution satellite image, and then a light pollution map in 2019, and this is in the same space where he painted that first scene. So in a playful bit of imagination, I began to think, what would a Starry Night 2019 look like? So this is where I do use Photoshop, but hardly in any other things. So I am questioning, with my work, where I might find these stories. You know, after all, I'm a photographer, and photography means anyone? Any photographers in here? It means to write with light. So I began to ask myself, where else are these stories written? In the landscapes of Georgia O'Keeffe or Ansel Adams, complemented by light pollution maps below. See, what I realized is that we would be telling very different stories. And I hope that you can walk out of here today appreciating the value of natural darkness, the interruption that natural darkness has in the presence of artificial light. Because light interrupts darkness, artificial light specifically. That's a very important thing to think about. When you interrupt something, you keep it from moving forward. Light interrupts our day or our night. Artificial light interrupts what we would use as sleeping time. It affects our circadian rhythm. It affects everything, our sleep hygiene. So in that context, artificial light is also interrupting art. Who's painting the Starry Night today? Where are those? Who's out there photographing these things? You can find them online, of course, but it's getting harder. And when you interrupt art, you're interrupting life and art history and all that it has to provide to a culture and a society. So we're standing in the way of our own culture. We're standing in the way of our own progress. And how do we feel about these books? Will they still matter? Legacies to be leave for our children. Or consider this from Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. And the traveler in the dark, thank you for your tiny spark. You could not see where to go if you did not twinkle so. Okay, so thinking about my friend's challenge, I thought, well, okay, guilty. I I am part of the problem. I don't want to be, but admittedly, I need to turn my lens on these spaces that are overly lit, and I need some help. I use the Bortle Dark Sky Brightness Indicator Index as a way to find sites. I spend a lot of time scouting. And photography is not just about taking a camera out and taking a good picture. There's so much more that goes into it. So, and I thought, well, what distant places would I need to go to? Where would I need to travel? And as it turns out, about a mile. Okay. So the parking lots of my own community, this is what night looks like, where we live. Okay. So it's accumulative, and none of this should be that bright. It's shocking to me that I could almost hand-hold a camera without a tripod to shoot in a lot of places I go. It's brighter outside at night than it is in this room right now, in many places that I'll show you in a moment. So when night looks like day, talk about an identity crisis. Okay? We've got a problem. And hopefully some solutions, because that's Kalamazoo. Okay. There are no real borders to it. So I decided to venture out a little bit further, expand my scope. And I made it to Las Vegas, considered at that time when I was applying to get funding to go forward to visit other sites, the brightest city on night Earth. All vice, no virtue. 11 days in Vegas. That's about 10 days too long. So, yeah, when my friends asked me, they said, so, you're a brainiac and you spend a lot of time in your world of academia applying for grants. So where are you going? What are you doing? I said, I'm going to Vegas. on your own dime. Well, I actually made a pitch and got to go, and very much appreciated that opportunity. You know, when I was there, the two questions were, oh, are you winning? Yes, I am. I'm not gambling, so I'm going to walk out of here with photographs, because that's what I came to do. Right? Or are you here for a medical conference? Nope. Right? So just taking pictures at night. Don't mind me, please. Don't mind. So, you know, I also wanted to visit places that found ways to synchronize their lives with natural light and value the night sky. This eventually landed me back in Peru, which should be no surprise down at the bottom right. So I was sure it would be a playground of starry nights. Even the Bortle Dark Sky Brightness Index confirmed this for me. Turns out artificial light's everywhere. Now this is a little overload for you, too much to look at. It helps you to understand my experience of standing in front of millions of lights at times and being assaulted. So this is a very quiet whisper of an assault of light pollution that I found in a lot of places I visited. Mojave Desert, Machu Picchu, Indiana, Chicago, Madrid, Spain, Kentucky, Paris, etc. And you'll see some of those images in the exhibit. So like most stories, this one begins at home. I used to pass by a construction site that reminded me of the pyramids of Giza. But more importantly was the orange sky behind it. It's just a couple miles from where I live. So the lights from the main road, Stadium Drive, paint the night sky this very bright orange. Looking for the reset on this sacred American site, where the ritual of shopping would soon take place. It's a mall development. So the future would be more bright, but less wise. And so I'm thinking to myself, this is the birth of another new normal. Another new normal. Right? But artificial light is not normal. It's not new. And it's not natural. So our water's contaminated, parking lots are brighter. Right? And not unlike a crime scene, you know, this image was hard to stomach. This bright peak cut a path into like this crystal frost of the parking lot that it occupied. And I titled this Oil and Water. So if you think about it, oil and water really don't mix, obviously. It's a good example. One propels life, the other not. So no two substances have, I think, a greater grip on our planet. Water and oil. Like, you could probably hear something about that every single day if you listened hard enough. So this image unfolds a brightly lit scene of mixed sludge, which conflates compounds we need with those we want. And again, it's kind of a new normal. I think we would find the absence of these odd in parking lots that are paved to make room for more light and more cars. So less natural is the new normal. I saw this from my own driveway. So naturally dark nights are endangered. Now nights getting brighter by about 6% a year. It's one of the most recent statistics. How many years does it make? How many years do we have before it makes it twice as bright? About 12 at night. So that's worth talking about. I get calls, I ask people ask me, you know what, they just installed LED lights in my neighborhood. They who? Well, they were installed. I came home and the night's a lot brighter. And it's really annoying. What can I do? I'm an artist. I think vote. Maybe it's too late. The lights are installed, the research is done, the money's been spent. You don't want to take these down. It's something that you have to start a conversation about early. It's almost as if you have to predict things before they happen. That's the nature of prediction. I wish that I had some better answer. I have barely enough time to make these photographs working the night shift, right? To also become an activist. This is a preserved facade. Lit to honor legacy, lit to honor history. And it's just the facade of the building. There's nothing else going on here. They just left it remaining up. But it's a great example of classic uplighting. Straight up. Now, strong shadows at night are odd. Right? Shadows and darkness, those two things, like oil and water, don't mix. So of course we like the building, but it doesn't stop, obviously. We don't see it, but that light just keeps going up. So what is it for? Who is it for? People? I'm the only one there. And so many of the places I go, there's like hundreds of lights. In one week, I feel outnumbered. So you guys see a pattern here. In the adjacent No Dark Inside exhibit, out here, you'll see that often, part of the time, there's no one home. Okay, so this image was made, anyone want to guess? What time?
5 o'clock in the afternoon.
Keep going.
10 p.m.
Keep going up.
2 a.m.
11 p.m. I only know because all this metadata gets thrown out on the card of the camera. And there's really no Photoshop trick here. It was remarkably bright. Now, obviously, I've made my case. Quality of light affects quality of life. Okay? And I would think, I know that I'm in a room of scientific minds, mostly, that this affects insects, moths, wildlife, fauna, flora. And I bet they also have something to say about this. It's not like we asked them. They're dazed and confused. And that's why I titled this piece Swarm. Wildlife and fauna depend on natural darkness. They're casualties of artificial, there's a lot of casualties of artificial light. A lot of times when I will present this work, people take a very kind of human-centric approach to it. Us, we, humans. But it's the biosphere. It's something that we invented to make our lives better industrially. But unfortunately, Edison didn't give us the warning signs with it. We didn't have the predictive ability to recognize its benefits and its consequences. And so those are some of the things as a photographer who needs light to tell his story is faced with. So we shouldn't overlook these other populations, even if we find insects unappealing. And we are part of their food chain instead of the other way around. I wanted a big reveal here, the big show. That's flag lighting. Patriotism is not a bad thing. Wise patriotism is something that we may benefit from even more. And I've thought about this. How do you solve the problem of flag lighting? Maybe that's for someone in this room to figure out. Because these are the consequences, these are the benefits, these are a clash of needs and wants and desires. And when I drove past this flag, I thought, I gotta come back. You know, there are just thousands of moths and insects that are, and the lights were down on the ground, straight up to the sky. That were, everything was just so attracted to it. You know, and to me, this is what a broken food chain looks like. Remember I was telling you how light interrupts are? Light interrupts the night. It interrupts everything. It interrupts evolution. Now imagine life as a leaning basswood tree. Right? They make great dining halls for blue jays. But I don't want you to mistake this for a pretty picture of a tree. If you look down on the left, you'll see a blue line that indicates the angle of that tree over a parking lot, as the snapshot indicates. And I went back, and you can see on the right too, that severe angle. Although because of the way I photographed it, it looks more straight up, but that's truly the angle it was. When I went back, it's long gone. And what are we doing to trees, even in their dormancy? They're bending towards artificial light. They're confused. It doesn't do too much for us to also stand in artificial light, especially blue light, at night, if you want to confuse yourself. We strangle them, right, and drape them with light. So yeah, that's a tree. Okay. And you can see that image in the exhibition. It's titled Christmas Time is Here. Like here, right? There. That's a season's greeting. I don't want to douse our joy. I don't want to, deliver bad news. We just have to find ways to be wise. At the same time, we are as a kind of celebratory culture. And these are trees also. And these. And this was the entrance to the festival with all the trees that were wrapped in the light. So artificial light scatters aquatic life as well, okay, as this image of a pond indicates that I made in Peru. And larger ponds, Lake Michigan. That's Chicago and the Willis Tower in the background. Anybody can see it. So very, very small dots. I was amazed how something that looks so small could be so pervasive. Anyone want to guess when this image was made? Around 11:30 at night. Okay. So to help you see a little bit more into this image from your distance, there's the Willis Tower, an arrow pointing to it. I was standing 40 miles away. I was in another state. To me, that's pretty amazing. With the naked eye, I didn't necessarily need to take this picture. I'm glad I did. But with the naked eye, to be able to stand in another state and to see the lights from another city was really alarming. So of course I want to get a closer look. And the sky just gets brighter and more orange. The Central Business District, sky glow in Chicago. After and just at the beginning of sunset. Now it seemed to make this triptych very fitting, but it just wasn't the city that captivated me, so I traveled into the suburbs. This is the Watch the Light show in Auburn, Illinois. I don't know if you guys know this, but there's a television show on a major network called the Christmas Light Fight. So we build up these competitions for light, and I had to make this part of my project. spent a lot of time, and there are many festivals of light now popping up, bigger ones, competitions, cities for a whole weekend now are lighting the entire space up. So I know everybody talks about Christmas getting out of hand, but this is the winner of the, I believe, 2013 Christmas light fight competition. And now there's 600,000 lights that were used in 2016. So the largest light show used 1 million in 2013. So here's my question for you guys. How does something get brighter if you use fewer lights? Because in 2016, it was brighter, but he used 400,000 less lights. This is something that's in your communities. Something I brought up earlier. What?
LED.
LED. Yeah. And I don't know if anybody's been driving a car and been in front of a car with LED lights. Maybe you can, yeah, you know it. Right? And it's creating a rift in cars that don't use LED lights with cars that do. So we have a road that's populated with a variety of different agitators, not entirely intentionally. So that idea of light making us safer, that's up in the clouds somewhere. It's a very questionable activity. Okay, so by switching to LED lights, he made it brighter. Okay. Now this is near 0 degree temperatures. You can see some of the snapshots that I included down on the left side. Okay. The weather is horizontally blowing snow, so it's possible to operate a DSLR with gloved fingers. If you guys use sensitive equipment in difficult weather conditions, hopefully that equipment can handle that. So, there's not a lot of activity going on at 10 p.m. when I was photographing this. But if you think about the energy required to do something like this, there are other reasons why artificial light at night affects our air and our space and our composure. The Temple, the Fountain, and the people, again, is following that same pattern. Now, there's nothing wrong with community worship, but there's something that goes wrong when the lights are left on after the last prayer. I stand in all this light, and I shouldn't be the only one there. After all, how many of us leave the lights on in your home? Is that for security? If so, then you're probably making it easier for people to see inside, or to see your property. That's what the criminals say when they're asked. This is just basic research that's out there in the public domain. Artificial light makes it easier to commit a crime. Okay. So what we think and what research tells us are kind of far apart on the fact spectrum. So I do want to admit something here. That it's natural, I think, that we are attracted to light. If you've ever been in a cave, the light will, if you see a natural light coming through it, you're going to kind of be attracted to that and probably walk towards it. Same thing happens with artificial light. It's just that our brain probably hasn't figured that part out yet. But it's a dangerous attraction. And I watch people, not intentionally, who are attracted to light as well. They become part of my project. So exposure to artificial light can lead to all kinds of health problems. You can spend a lot of time looking at this, researching it yourself, cancer, dementia, obesity. All of this stuff is related to sleep hygiene as well. So there's morality at stake, there's mortality at stake. It's not just our own, it's the whole biosphere. Okay, so I couldn't help but meditate on this. I was at a zoo, insect house, December, and top right, so I was photographing, I thought, well, I'm going to have some lens flare, there's going to be some problem with this. Because there's a strong blue light, and what's this about? Because I'm looking through the lens, and I realized it's a bug zapper. in the insect house. Now, I'm not a scientist, I'm an artist. And I thought there's a reason, like, don't make fun of this one. It's a weird situation, right? But there's good reasons for this, I'm sure. So I asked the zookeeper that was there, why? Just out of curiosity. She said, well, if the bugs get out, we need to kill bugs. So the bugs that are in there, she said, well, we just need to kill bugs. Like, that's why we have it. Okay. But it wasn't odd to me to be in an insect house and to see this bright blue light. So the allure that we have with light is a very pretty poison, right? It comes at a great cost to our human condition. So people below a large screen. And yet at night you can wear light. And so artificial light, it kind of melts our defenses. Especially blue light at night. That's the most dangerous color to us, right? And to in the spectrum. Right? So this image here, as you can see, this is one of the few images that has text in it, but is the National Underground Railroad Freedom Center. And it's just north of Kentucky, in Cincinnati, Ohio. And that idea of melting our defenses is kind of, for me, illustrated in this melting moon. It's kind of a melting star. So to give you some context for this, I went to photograph a Ferris wheel and discovered a melting moon, okay, in the reflection in the building behind the Ferris wheel. So it's easy to go make an image like this on the left, but I wasn't ready for the one on the right, which is why I have that up in the exhibition. And something to think about here, let's not forget how important a dark sky and a visible North Star were to the ancestors of many Americans. Okay, so light pollution is a big deal. It didn't exist at the time that the Underground Railroad was in the height of its activity, but if it did, it might be telling a different story. Or we have many more stories to tell. The title of that one is Free Light, for obvious reasons. So I eventually made it to Vegas. And I thought, well, this is where color, light, and brains go to melt. Everybody there was so happy. And I honestly think that the reason that people were elated was that the 24 hours of light that they were exposed to, the beautiful natural light that you get in Las Vegas, and then the assault of artificial light kind of keeps you up. Happy, maybe, but artificially happy. Right, the pedestrian bridges, I don't know if anyone been to Vegas? A couple of people? Okay. So there's those bridges that you cross. It's a very managed experience. You cannot cross the street, the Vegas Boulevard, which is probably a wise thing. But the bridges have very large plexiglass walls. So when you stand between them, you're standing in a pinball machine of sorts, with mirrors, because you end up with multiple reflections from multiple vantage points. So it's like being a paddle in a pinball machine, surrounded by electric candles. Now, while this Venetian hotel was remarkably bright, and I could have handheld to make this image, there was no place as bright as the Luxor Casino. So if I gave everybody in this room a candle, it'd obviously get a little bit brighter. Okay. If I gave 40 billion people one candle each, which we don't have on the Earth, okay, it would look a lot like this. Advertised as the brightest light on night Earth. This is the Luxor Casino Hotel in Las Vegas. Now, as I said, I'm not anti-light. Artificial light has great applications. Surgery would be one of them. Okay. But I am pro-reason. And I question how reasonable it is to have to make the brightest light on night Earth. The advertisement in this building was created that you can see it from space. That's a casino, by the way, in a hotel. I also got a chance to work at the Las Vegas Astronomical Society to get atop Mount Potosi to see the same light from 30 miles away. So beyond that dome, to the right is Las Vegas. I don't know, some of the older folks in the room may know this is where Carol Lombard's plane crashed. Wasn't too familiar with that. But to the right is the beaming light, which is right here. That's the Luxor light. You know, I see this as a scratch in the night sky, the way I showed you in the first image of the scratches on the trees. We're just scratching our names all over the place. That's why I say this is writing with light. On day 5, I made it to the Hoover Dam. Okay. And after 11 total days in Vegas, I got back to my hotel room, usually around 2 a.m., working the night shift. Also being heavily affected by the thing that I was researching. The scientist becomes the research, or the artist. I looked like this. I felt like that. I'm sure you guys had days like that. Maybe today. Self-portrait in Las Vegas. So I think anyone would feel like this if they were salted with light. You don't need coffee. I have news for you. A little bit of blue light, and that'll keep you up. Okay. And I started to realize, I'm doing a project that is about the disorientation of sleep hygiene and your circadian rhythm. Yep, and it's working really well. I'm living proof of that. Okay. But when I made this image, I thought, okay, I gotta switch gears. I need to be in a quieter and more natural place to see how natural light was used, and to connect to something that was a little more sane and had a history, I think, of managing light. And that was a place where their emperors led their people to synchronize the light of the night as in the day, which was Peru for me, Cusco. Has anybody had the opportunity to visit Machu Picchu? It's a tremendous place. It's getting much harder to visit. You're going to want a guide. I highly recommend a guide. I would not just casually take a trip there. But it will help you evaluate all the things that you may need to learn and know about light that you, birthright should know, I think. So I went to photograph sacred sites. And you can see how Machu Picchu was created, like many other sites, even in Cusco, to maximize the relationships to the path of the sun. But I thought this isn't going to go too well. I came here to make images in natural light, which I did, but I also found a surprising amount of light trespass and sky glow. Tourists. I'm one of them. Not every time you point a finger at something, you have 3 pointing back at yourself, of course. So we want to be part of the solution, and we can start by recognizing that we're part of the problem. So light spills on every street like an aqueduct in this image here. Every hill was draped in light. This is Cusco. But my hopes were not dashed. I did eventually find some solace in natural light. I climbed atop the hills of raised terraced agriculture to make basically an uninterrupted photograph away from the dots of tourists below. If you look down on the left side, bottom left side, and that's what every photographer kind of dreams of. Oddly, when I go thousands of miles away, I'm less alone than when I go 1 mile away. But I knew I could be in a space where I'd be completely alone, I could make that uninterrupted photograph and get to the right place and not be disturbed. Or so I thought. Not a stock image, I made it. She was there, I was there. We kind of caught each other off guard. But I like to keep this in the presentation because if you look closely, there's a blue eye and a brown eye. And I thought, number one, dogs are cute. And it's nice to have a companion for a little while. But to me, this was some kind of karma. You know, brown, blue represents to me the nature of my project, sky and earth. So I finally made it to Abu Gunca, if I'm hopefully pronouncing that correctly, in the town of Ollantaytambo. right, where the stone face of Viracocha is found. So light would pass from the, solstice light would pass from the top left side of this Apo Pincayuna, and it would illuminate part of the town below to indicate that it's time for harvesting and other things. Okay, so this mountain that I had the privilege of visiting and standing in front of is a space for, it's a calendar, I should say, it's a pantry, it's a refrigerator, you would store grain there. But it's also a big reflector for the artificial light that I also discovered. Because I photographed it in the day and in the night. So in closing, from starry nights to sunny days, there is a place and a time for all types of light. But there's a reason that the sun goes down. It balances our day, it balances our life, it balances our hormones. And I kind of come to this conclusion that the Midwest uses light to accommodate culture. When you use artificial light, you're doing it in a way to accommodate a need. Southwest, the casinos. I think that they are using light to consume culture, to seduce culture, to keep us involved. If anybody's ever been inside a casino, you'll know what I mean. No windows, lots of noise, lots of light, lots of confusion. So light has this really crazy power that I witnessed daily to affect attitudes that don't seem totally in line with evolution. So there are lessons, I think, not only in the United States for us, but in Europe as well. I was just working in the brightest city at night in Europe. These are some images that I haven't had a chance yet to really work with too much. I did print one or two. This is the retirement garden in Madrid. And Madrid happens to be the brightest city at night in Europe. And I wasn't there to go photograph, but I was there for an exhibition, and I thought, of course I'm going to go photograph, and I got very lucky. Talk about serendipity, it's like a dog with one brown eye and one blue eye. So let there be light, but I think let there be less light bulb. Darkness is not the enemy, and light is no hero. As Scott Fitzgerald said, show me a hero and I'll write you a tragedy. So again, I'm not opposed to artificial light, just its overreach into our well-being. It's a public transaction that affects our personal space. It affects the biosphere, as I said earlier. So we can look to culture to find stories about triumph of light over darkness. Modified light is part of that. Institutionally, spiritually, industrially, humans have evolved to find light as a prerequisite for defeating darkness. Fear of darkness is somewhat normal. It's robust. A lot of people have it. But the monster never crawled out from under the bed. But artificial light is a false cure for darkness, because it's something that we should also fear. And I do think night is in collapse. Recently there are a lot of satellites, or soon will be satellites launched that are going to permanently affect stargazing or night skies. Astronomical societies, hopefully you'll support them, can probably tell you a lot more about that. But I just saw some headline about that the other day. So I think we more greatly desire a power of light and artificial light than darkness, and that's pity. You can see the difference that it makes. Troposphere is a bloated orange on the left side. It's a pretty poison. So, I don't want you to feel overwhelmed. I don't want anyone to feel helpless. There are things you can do. This is our story today. And I hope we can tell a better story to future generations about how we made it safer, smarter, and more prosperous for our health and our well-being. Artificial light is here to stay, and we do need light, but we also need this. So thank you, guys. If you get a chance to visit the exhibition, I have original paper plates to look at, and I'm glad to take any questions.
Are there examples of cities that when their current streetlights are being replaced, that are going to more sky-friendly lights?
Yes, there are a number of, I was in Burns Harbor, Indiana, taking a picture of the Willis Tower, which used to be the Sears Tower. And to repeat the question, he wanted to know if there were cities that were so aware of the presence of artificial light, they were installing dark sky-friendly lighting. And there's a lot of them. And there are entire communities, like the one I was in when I made that photograph in Burns Harbor, from Indiana into Chicago. That is a dark sky community. I went there because I was curious about what the designation of a dark sky community was. And then I think last time I checked, I think there were 3 different levels of designations that towns and municipalities can achieve for a dark sky rating.
You call it dark sky?
Dark sky, yes. And there are parks. It's a tool for probably, I hope, the good, better. It's a tourism opportunity as well. You can visit dark sky parks. There's also, when I was with the president of the Las Vegas Astronomical Society, there was he's going to retire, he told me, in a village in Arizona that is a complete dark sky retirement village and community for dark sky enthusiasts. My greatest concern is what the launch of satellites will do to people who, kind of in the twilight of their life, are interested in spending time around dark skies they may not have had access to, because satellites will go wherever they want, however they choose. But you can probably look at the International Dark Sky Association's website to find that information.
Thank you.
A comment, I thought it was interesting and kind of ironic that you have the photo section there with the Underground Railroad Museum. Because if you know about the Underground Railroad, they used code songs, which were songs that had double meanings. And one of those very famous one is Follow the Drinking Horn. And those songs were used to give messages to people who were traveling north along the Underground Railroad. And the drinking horn is actually the Big Dipper. The Big Dipper is the predominant constellation in the northern sky. So the irony of it is that that was used to help people, Harriet Tubman and other people that were guiding people along the Underground Railroad to the north. And that ties in really nicely with my hobby, which is astronomy. But it's a very ironic situation that you have that included in the exhibit.
It took me a while to put all that together in my head, because I just went to photograph a Ferris wheel, and I knew there was a museum there, and I knew that I should look into glass, and glass became yet another opportunity to tell a story about light at night. When I got some distance from that night and that project, that follow the drinking gourd and follow the Milky Way, I did not know that code song, but it's I don't know if I would call it historical revisionism, but that image for me, everything I made has the greatest value. Everything else is easy to see, but that one popped up, snuck up on me. And I think that's the beauty of art. If you pay enough attention to your own work, the problem is that when you're doing your work, you may not be paying attention to your work. You guys feel that way? Like, when do you get the chance to take a step back and breathe and pay attention or to give attention? Maybe we should be paying this such a pace of them. And so, I appreciate that. Every time I speak, people have suggestions. They tell me things that just help me understand more about the project. Natural darkness was a very important trick, if you will, in World War II. I was in Madrid. I was speaking about the benefits of natural darkness, And a woman approached me, she actually bought a print, and she said, I really don't like when the shades are open, because we used to have to turn off all the lights during bombing raids. She, I think, lived in Poland, and then there was someone from Britain there who also had the same story. France built an entirely fake Paris miles outside so that they could get the Nazi planes to release all their ordnance before getting to Paris. So turning the lights out here and putting the lights up here on farmland has a great impact. There's many, many powerful stories, and that one you shared is important. Any other questions or?
I just want to mention a book that I recently purchased called The End of Night by Paul Olgard. It's talking about different lighting situations throughout the world. It's very interesting. It's kind of the same thing that you're trying to do in your art. So I recommend that book. It's really very interesting.
It's a great book.
Oh, you read it?
So let's thank Bill Davis.